say that again. I paused the recording. I will say that again. It is 7:02 on September 26th, 2024, and I'm calling this meeting of the Shutesbury Conservation Commission to order. This meeting is being recorded. Welcome, everybody. All right, so the first thing on the agenda is comments from the chair. And what I want to share with you guys is we interviewed and now have hired Matteo Pangallo to be the land use clerk. He's great. I'm so happy. He's the chair of the CPA right now in Shutesbury. He lives in Shutesbury. He's a parent. He's an English professor. I guess you could say part-time. He's got 2 classes that he teaches. And yeah, he was interested in the land use clerk position. We interviewed him. I interviewed him with the chair of planning and chair of ZBA. And he was great. And I think he's going to be great. And I believe the select board voted last night or Monday last night, I think, to hire him. And then I believe today Becky actually made an offer and he accepted. So that's exciting. So hopefully he can start right up. He'll come to our next meeting. I'll try and meet with him. We're going to also try to have Carrie work with him a little bit. I think Becky was going to reach out to Carrie and see if she'd do a working day with him, which would be super helpful. So that's exciting and really good. And I think that's really all I had to share. I think I might have mentioned this at the last meeting. There's this group that it's the Nature Conservancy working with the Fort River Watershed Association. And I believe one of them got this grant for $8,000 to pull people together who are all involved with the health of the Fort River and pull the 4 towns together that affect the Fort River and just have meetings. I think, the grant is basically just to make the effort to have multiple meetings. I think there's 3 or 4 planned, to just brainstorm ideas about what could happen in the different towns and what the different towns would want to see to improve the Fort River watershed. So I'm gonna go to those. There's one on October 17th is the first one. And I'll let you guys know how that goes. I know a lot of the players just from being in Amherst and doing other work for the Fort River in Amherst. Oh, somebody wants to come in. So there's that going on. That's all I can think of. Jan, do you have any updates on site visits?
We did a site visit this afternoon, and we saw more amphibians than I've seen in a really long time in one window well.
It was really weird.
But it's a non-jurisdictional construction project, so nothing to worry about.
Good.
I'm just curious, Jan, when you say it's non-jurisdictional, what's that based on?
It's nowhere near any wetland, river or lake.
Yeah, it was at 640 Wendell Road, and it's a garage project. And Jan and I went, and he had the garage location all staked out. And Jan and I walked, within 100 feet in all directions of where the project was going to happen, and there was no evidence of wetlands anywhere.
Excellent.
Yeah. And Jan, don't we have another site visit? I sent you an email that we'll need to set up. I forget the address. It's another building permit.
You sent that today?
I did, yeah.
I guess I didn't see that one. We have another site visit planned for Saturday, October 6th, I think it is. 2 that day. One at the top of the lake and the other was Southbrook. Was it all of them, I think? Let me see.
Yeah.
Also Old Orchard Road.
Oh, we're
The
doing all
orchard.
three?
Yeah, well, I don't know if we're gonna go to Southbrook, but that was maybe.
Okay. Okay, that'll be a full day. What time are we starting? I forget.
That was actually October 5th, starts at 9:30 on Old Orchard Road, 43 Old Orchard Road.
Okay. Hey, Scott.
Hello, sorry I'm late.
No worries. Just something I just finished saying is we hired a new land use clerk. And he's gonna be great. I think he's
Awesome.
gonna be really great. It's, I don't know if you know him, Matteo Pangalo. He lives in Shutesbury. He's a dad. He's the chair of the CPC.
Yeah, I thought that's wonderful news.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I think he's gonna be great.
He's gonna be awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So Scott, now that you're here, Jan just sort of did her little update on site visits. Do you have anything about conservation areas?
Maybe the only update, I did reach out to Highway Department to talk a little bit about the parking lot for West Quabbin Woodlands and the curb cut there. And I had a chance to see Steve when I was driving back to my house here the other day and mentioned it to him. So I'm hoping we can get that cleared through the Highway Department and make some progress on that. But maybe that's probably the most pressing thing. I know we want to make progress towards at least getting the parking lot in.
Mhm. Great. Time is it 7:09? Okay, first on our agenda is approving the minutes of September 12th. Does anybody have any changes or corrections to those?
Nope,
No.
really.
All right, I'll take a motion to approve the September 12th minutes.
Before we
like-
do that, I should probably say it had the last minute's date on the top. We'll fix that.
Okay,
I'd like to make a motion that we correct the date on the minutes and approve them.
second?
I'll second.
Great. Douglas,
Aye.
Rowan,
Aye.
Khan,
Aye.
and Wilson. Aye. Great. Yeah, minutes, we still have quite a few minutes. I reached out to Carrie to find out if she's been able to catch up on minutes at all, and she said she's working on some of the old ones. And then there was a couple, I don't know if I mentioned this already, there was a couple that Doc was supposed to have done. And I emailed both of them and he responded that he just wasn't going to be able to get to them. So we might have to work on those just from the recording. If anyone is motivated to watch those, I'll send an email around with the 2 dates. I think it's I'm not sure which month. They're both from the same month, and I'll just send the dates around. And if anybody feels the motivation to watch the recording and write up some minutes, I think that's the only way we're going to get those done.
Yeah, send the dates because I did one set of minutes that I didn't need to do just for the drill. So there might be one done.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll look back and see.
And not under site visits, but under the separate item was the town birthday party on October 6th. That's where we're gonna do the table from 2:45 to 5 p.m. Everybody that can come.
Everyone's invited. Yeah, that's going to be great. Jan, you just went to a training, right? Where you came up with a couple of flyers.
I did the fundamentals 101 this week. It was
Great.
the things are out of order, so I did the first one third. Anyway, they had in the back flyers and stuff like that you could pull out and stick your own Conservation Commission name on, and use for public outreach, so we can use some of the stuff they did.
Yeah, that's great. I sent you the one that I know of that the commission has. So we can look at the three of those and see where they overlap and then, yeah, print out a bunch of them to bring on October 6th.
Is Mateo
fifth.
gonna be up and at 'em next week to print things for us?
I think so. I can check with Becky what his official start day is. I think she sent the offer letter today and that he accepted. And I don't know what the start date is, but it could be as early as next week.
Okay, otherwise just, we'll figure it out and someone can go in and do it.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I'll be sitting at the table. That's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a Concom weekend. We've got site visits all day on Saturday? No, on Sunday, which is which, and the other day is
It's Saturday, right? The 5th, and then
the thing is on the
the
6th, the thing,
the
the
thing.
birthday party, community outreach.
Party. Yeah,
Okay, sounds good. Well, it's only 7:13. Got a couple minutes. I did go by the dam site on Montague Road and saw the grass starting to come in very slowly. Probably with today's rain, it'll hurry up a little bit more. But it was starting to come in. And Jan, we should talk about doing some site visits at the library. Some check-ins
okay.
as that
When-
project
So
progresses.
going back to the Dudleyville, we were waiting for 75% grass. Is that the idea?
Yeah,
I think we've already passed their deadline to get back to us. But we have to wait on grass in any event.
yeah,
Okay.
yep. Yeah, it's just starting to come in. That'll take a while. I'll let my cat out. Just a second. All right, my clock says 7:15. So next on our agenda at 7:15 is the request for amended order of conditions for 31 Lakeview Road, DEP file number 2860286. And I'll just read my little, this hearing is being held as required by the provisions of Chapter 131, Section 40 of the General Laws of the Commonwealth, an act relative to the protection of wetlands, as most recently amended, and the Town of Shutesbury General Wetlands Protection Bylaw. All right, and we have a few people here for this one. And I don't know how you guys want to maybe one of you could sort of present the request letter that we received today.
I will defer to Attorney Martin.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Although most people would like lawyers to be muted more. Except for Donna. Good evening. We've visited you a few times now. Thank you for your patience and your time that you spent with us on the topic of the conditions that we are requesting be amended with respect to Kathy and Joe Salvador's property at 31 Lakeview Road, Shutesbury, Massachusetts. I started this process by initially writing to the Conservation Commission and the chairperson about a position that we believe is correct with respect to the illegality and onerous conditions of in perpetuity that were incorporated into the order of conditions. Yeah, Kathy Salvador, who is on a call here with us today, and her husband owned the property, and they were very concerned about the long-running effect of in perpetuity conditions. I sent a follow-up correspondence to the commission chairperson and council about my analysis of the legality of the in perpetuity conditions, and then followed it up with another meeting with this board. I have subsequently taken responsibility for drafting a proposed petition to have the conditions that we believe are not consistent with the law be deleted and amended. Those were submitted this afternoon. They are still conditions 27 and 28. We are seeking to have the category and classification as in perpetuity deleted from the condition, as well as in perpetuity conditions and conditions 31 and 32. With respect to condition 30, there has been some, I think, productive discussion amongst my client, counsel, and myself with respect to that condition, which severely limits the owner's ability to even quietly enjoy their property. We have proposed that the condition be deleted for the in perpetuity language, but that the conditions state that the town and the home property owner will reach a mutually agreeable agreement for some limited use in the site, such as putting out a bench so that they can sit out there and enjoy the beauty of the topography which they purchased. And they have grandchildren who they could allow them to learn about the ecological benefits of that property and enjoy it as well, all in a non-disruptive or disruptive pace. Their other two conditions, 33 and 34, were conditions, again, that I think are in violation of the law. They require that the applicant had to provide a signed letter to the Conservation Commission notifying the committee of the transfer of the property, and that they have notified the grantee about the perpetual restriction. Well, since we're seeking to have the perpetual restriction deleted, we think that's either moot or should be completely deleted. And likewise, I think a very clear example of overreaching with respect to the context of the law is paragraph 34, which requires that what the the condition refers to as grantee. So anyway, if someone were to buy their property, that places a burden on that person to submit something in writing that they understand the requirements of the order of conditions, including the perpetual wetlands conditions. Here again, if we are fortunate to have you accept our petition, that perpetual clause would go away, but it would not release or relieve the future property owners from having to submit that letter. If you think about it, you're asking someone who buys a piece of property to send a letter to the Conservation Commission saying, I know I bought this property and I'm telling you that I've looked at things. Well, again, anyone who buys this property or any other property that's has orders of conditions against it will be heavily advised and informed as they go through the purchase process of any restrictions on record or on deed or of public record, and they'll be aware of them. So we think this is just an unnecessary step and a trap for the unwary. Someone forgets to do this, and then they go to transfer their property another 10 years later. Someone's saying, wait a second, that letter isn't of record. And once again, it's interfering with the ownership of the property. The conditions that we are asking to be deleted in perpetuity are conditions that we discussed quite extensively last time. We think it's tantamount to an unlawful taking of the property by placing these restrictions. And so There are 7 proposed amendments. They're straightforward and simple. I know that council has a copy of the petition, and I know that the chair has. So that's the overall position and petition request. And we're ready to be available to answer any questions or address any issues as a result of it. First of all, I'll ask Kathy Salvador if there's anything she wants to add to that overview.
Nope, I think you covered it perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, I want to make sure that the other commissioners got this because the petition that was sent today did go to the Concom general email. So I was just assuming that you guys got it too. I know Jan said she saw it. Bob, Scott,
What-
did you guys see it?
What
I'm
was,
looking at it right now. I haven't reviewed it I was tied up all today, so
Yeah,
I am in possession of it now. Thank you.
good.
yeah, I don't believe I've seen it in, am I correct that it was sent today?
What?
Was that letter sent today?
Yes,
Would it be appropriate to ask that it be put on the screen?
Yeah, let's see. Let me just see.
So Counselor, these are new conditions that you're asking the commission to vote on?
this is a request to modify the conditions that are in the order of conditions. There are existing conditions, and we're asking that they be modified.
And this, and I apologize, I don't have it in front of me. This has the language of that modification?
Yeah, it's very similar. The conditions that are listed on this are the same ones that were listed on the sort of previous
Gotcha.
letter that we received from Attorney Martin.
Previously, I conveyed our position via correspondence, and I was asked to submit it as a formal petition for an amendment to the conditions. So it's essentially the same message in a different format. I try to keep it as succinct and direct as possible.
Can everybody see my screen?
I can.
Kim,
So Counselor, when you say delete in perpetuity from the requirement would still read the same. It's just that those 2 words would be restricted, taken away from it, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
I think we're talking about, and I can pull up the order of conditions too.
I've got the order. I didn't
Okay.
see that this new language had come in, and I apologize.
Because these all start under the category that's called post-construction / in perpetuity conditions. And then number 27 is the first one under there. So like number 27 doesn't necessarily say the word perpetuity in it, but it's under that category. And I think one thing the Concom should definitely consider is just getting rid of that half of the definition of that section. That whole section should just really be called post-construction conditions, not post-construction / in perpetuity conditions. You know, that way, at least not all of them are considered in perpetuity. You know, we can talk about each one individually, but leaving it as a whole category, I think does cause a problem.
And I apologize, Scott. I just do want to do one quick follow-up before we get to you. The so my main thought on this is that when the commission, and I wasn't on the commission at the time, put in these perpetual conditions, they wanted to see that boulder wall stood, and as an allowance, as a mitigation for doing this construction, which is within a riverfront resource area, quite uncommonly, that a certain amount of area would be protected. I just would want to find out what assurances there would be that area that was set off to be protected by the boulder wall, so to speak, would continue to be protected.
Yeah, no, I think we all are concerned about that. I do think it would be good for us to like go through number by number, because they're all, each condition is a little different. Scott, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thanks. I was just wondering, I know Donna's on, and I was wondering if town attorney has had a chance to review this, and if there would be an opportunity to hear from her.
Donna?
Yes. Yes, I have had an opportunity to review it. I've had an opportunity to review all of the documents that Attorney Martin has submitted. I share his legal opinion with in perpetuity being sort of a blanket condition for post-construction conditions. I think everybody needs to understand that your jurisdiction is relative to the wetlands and protecting it. And that doesn't give you the right to basically put conditions on property that in some ways operate as a taking of those properties. So I don't want to in any way suggest that your authority around protecting the brook and putting conditions on the property for construction and mitigation and certain conditions on the land that protect the brook during construction and going forward are on our conditions. But the idea of in perpetuity, I think Jim gave a great example of having a condition in perpetuity that some third party has to sign a document somewhere down the road in closing. And if that doesn't happen and the property's transferred 10 years later, there's a cloud on that title because that document was never gotten. You're not doing certificate of compliance every single time that property transfers and a document comes to you. I mean, some of these conditions are onerous and they're just not necessary and they're just not really within your jurisdiction. That said, I think that, and I was very clear with Jim that the do not disturb area, although I don't like that terminology at all, is area that's within the brook, that it's really important that bank be protected. And that's why they came forth with the in 3 of deleting in perpetuity. But basically what I asked them to do is sort of give a list of what they would want to do down in that area so that the when they're looking at this, had a really clear understanding of what they meant by they wanted to do down there. And as you can see, the Salvadors and Jim have put in that they want to be able to place a bench within that area so they can sit and view the river. Not disturb it in the sense of dredging or filling or any of the things that clearly are in violation of the Wetlands Act anyway, and you would have the right to act, but to be able to use it in the sense of enjoying it as their property, as long as they're respectful of the conditions that are put on it. And I think that's really what we're talking about here today. Not to lift the conditions of protecting the wetlands on that property, but rather getting rid of some of this legal language that just really isn't appropriate in order of conditions and trying to still meet what you tried to do to protect that river, but to clean up the language so that it doesn't really go further than your jurisdiction or authority regarding conditions on a wetland, on an order of conditions.
Can I ask just a couple of follow-ups? So that's super helpful, Donna. I'm wondering, maybe one observation is I think, this whole area in question is, within the 200 feet of riverfront that are already, protected in the aura by the bylaw. And so it already by town bylaw restricts a whole host of activities taking
Exactly.
place within the aura, aside from the aura condition. So like, it seems to me it would be a little weird to actually grant things that could be done in there that are maybe already restricted in the bylaw. The bylaw is pretty specific in the no disturbance to vegetation and other activities that could alter the wetland within that area is what we're talking about here. And these were orders of conditions that were set forth to offset work that had been taking place, and in this case had taken place really already had started before the Salvadors had approached the Conservation Commission. We actually it was in violation, and we're trying to find a way forward. So I'm wondering, for each one of these conditions, if it seems in one hand, we could delete all of these, what's laid out, but I still think just by the nature of where it sits, it's already protected because it's in a resource area. And I'm wondering if you have reviewed each one of these. Are you saying, Donna, that 1 through 6 you reviewed and you believe these modifications are ones that you also support as town council?
Yeah, but let's be really clear. We're not getting rid of the condition. We're getting rid of the language that it's in perpetuity. And
Right.
that's a real distinction. You're absolutely right. You have jurisdiction over this area. You will continue to have jurisdiction over this area through your bylaw and through the Wetlands Protection Act. In perpetuity is very specific legal language that says forever. If you change your bylaw because there's changes in studies in science that allows something else to go on down there, or say you should plant this down there because it's healthier for the stream than the vegetation that's down there. If you want to make an order saying you have to get rid of invasive species, all of that kind of flexibility in both the changes in the law, the changes in the bylaw, the changes in science, this in perpetuity language would stop. And you just don't have the authority to do that, is what I'm trying to say. So the conditions themselves, outside of this do not disturb language, which I really don't like, given that it's part of the bylaw, I don't think you put that kind of thing in a condition, is to get rid of the nature of this condition is forever.
Yeah, understood. Thank you, Donna. Thank you.
Kathy, you have your hand up?
I just wanted to, so that Bob and whoever has not really seen the property in a while, just so that you understand that all of the things in the order of conditions that we were required to do to protect the wetlands, we've done. And the things, Bob, I think you mentioned the boulders, and concern about those being moved perhaps, or something changing the permanence of those markers. We've got boulders there that you'd have to be Hercules to move. And I know Joe has a tractor. Everybody knows Joe has a tractor because he rides around town on it every day. But our intent was to make those boulders part of our landscape, and that's what they are. They're huge boulders delineating that line. And then the Concom asked us also to install pins as markers along that line of demarcation, which we did, and they're pretty obvious. I think when you guys, whoever comes to do a post-construction visit, will realize that those mean something. They're green. We painted them green. They're concrete. They're fixed in the ground. They're not going anywhere. So that line of demarcation is really clear that, that's where the wetlands protections begin, and there's nothing to be happening in the area right before the waterfront. So, and every other condition that was placed on the property, we've satisfied. So the only thing left to discuss in our minds was this in perpetuity requirement.
Just
Thank you.
two quick follow-ups if I may. The house is occupied now.
Yes,
Yes, it is.
Has the post-construction site visit taken place within 30 days of the project completion?
it's not complete because we wanted the vegetation that we'd put in place to be more established. And we knew we had I think a 3-year period before we had to schedule that or apply for that certificate of compliance. So, and then we had this issue that we wanted to get resolved. And then one other thing we're struggling to get is the as-built planting plan from our engineer. We're having a hard time getting in touch with him, and I may just have to do that manually myself. Hopefully that will be acceptable.
Thank you for that. And I'm excited that there's markers in place, and I'm excited that they're big, heavy boulders, and I just want to make sure that it not only has the weight of the boulders, but has the weight of the law. And I'll address this to the chair. Has this commission ever put a deed, put language in a deed that a boulder wall shall serve as a marker to protect the resource area?
Well, that was going to be one of my questions as we move through the actual order of conditions. So there was a deed restriction that was part of this order of conditions. And I'm wondering if that got recorded already with the order of conditions.
Yes, it did.
It did. I'm sorry. I was on mute. Yes.
Okay. So other commissioners, have you seen that page that's kind of at the end of the order of conditions is a deed restriction? So then my next question, we haven't heard at all from the Salvadors about that. Is that something that you're willing to leave as part of the order of conditions? I can bring it up. Should we look at it? Let me see. Let me find it.
Well, go ahead, bring it up, please.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the order. Kind of at the end of the order with the conditions we're concerned about. There's that. So this is the deed restriction. And I particularly like number 2. Any future clearing of vegetation or grading or other disturbance of land surface within areas labeled on the attached registry Exhibit A as no disturb. So these are restriction. This restriction prohibits in perpetuity clearing of vegetation in that area. Prohibited shall include placement of fill, leaves, grass clipping, garbage, cutting of indigenous plants. So it's sort of leave that area alone, no vegetation removal, no dumping of waste. Yeah, so that was part of the order of conditions, and then this map was the last page of the order of conditions, showing the line that was marked with the boulders, that's already all in place. And that's exhibit A or attachment A that's referred to right here, exhibit A. So anyway, I was just wondering if people have comments about this. Scott.
Yeah,
Scott.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Beth and Bob, for asking the question. I think, the assumption that this deed has been filed, and I believe the deed restriction is a perpetual condition, right? It's a perpetual restriction on the deed. With that understanding that that's been filed and it's been restricted this way, I don't have concerns with making the modifications that are being suggested. But I'm glad that we're clarifying that we're not talking about removing or changing or unfiling the deed restriction.
But if I may point out, we have requested that deed restriction language, which the chairperson just referenced, does have at the end, this restriction prohibits in perpetuity. And we have asked that that language, for the reasons I have stated and your counsel has stated, be deleted. And further, we have asked with respect to the no disturb area that the town Conservation Commission agree to meet with the landowner to see if there are some modifications that can be made to that must be mutually agreed upon, to do things such as going in there to pick up things, putting a bench in there to sit, things like that, that would allow them to have some enjoyment of the brook without in any way disturbing and having a negative impact on the property.
Well, I think there's kind of two different topics going on then. There's really, for me, there's what is illegal or what is the perpetuity language that is in our order of conditions above the deed restriction. That's what's the actual conditions. What I've heard from you and from Donna is that we can't really legally have that in perpetuity amongst the conditions. And that makes sense to me because I saw what you sent around that is in Mass General Law, whatever, that said conditions can really only last for 30 years. I get it. I understand then that means orders of conditions and also certificates of compliance, because those are actually just ongoing conditions. So if you're using the word conditions and saying conditions can only last 30 years, I get it. And we will take it out of that document. This is an actual deed restriction. And I guess I'm just confirming that clarity and that what you're saying we can't have in legally is what we have within our conditions, but we can legally have a deed restriction.
Yeah, and to build on that, Madam Chair, I'm in the same place. I think it makes sense to me to make the modifications that are being requested for the order of conditions. The deed restriction, that was identified at the time we had, proceedings where this was agreed to. I'm not as interested in going back and trying to revisit a deed restriction that was put into place.
Kathy?
With respect, we agreed to these conditions, might I say, under duress. It was a very difficult process that we went through with a very, how can I say this nicely, overzealous chair who I think took advantage of our maybe our ignorance at the time of all of the rules of the wetlands protections bylaws. We learned a lot, as I said in the last meeting, but I think we were in a very difficult position with an overly zealous chair at the time. And we had no choice but to agree to these conditions at that time. We fully want that wetlands area to be protected. It's right next to our property. We would be crazy not to want it protected. We don't intend to do anything to the area that shouldn't be disturbed. It's what makes the house as nice as I think it is that wetland area behind the house. So I just wanted to be clear about why we agreed, when we agreed, and why we didn't ask at the time to amend the order of conditions. We weren't in a position to ask at that time. We knew that we wouldn't even be able to have this conversation. It's a different commission today.
Thank you.
Which we appreciate.
Thank you. I think it would benefit us to go through each of the conditions specifically and look at them. Bob, did you have your hand up?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bob here. I did have my hand up, and I just wanted to say that the commission did issue an order of conditions, and I can't go back in time. I wasn't on the commission at that time, but they set these conditions up for a reason. And any applicant has the right to appeal a decision if if they're aggrieved by it. It can go to the state for a superseding order. My understanding, this was not appealed at the time. Now it sounds like the common ground is we want the boulder, we all both, both the proponent and the commission want the boulders to stay in place and the area to be protected. And we're just looking now to see what method to protect that area is. I can tell you that this is an extraordinary site. I can't think of a single new home that has been built in a floodplain this close to a jurisdictional river in any of the surrounding towns. So I think this does require special attention, and the agreed upon in the order, again, I wasn't here for it, of that protected area needs to be protected by deed restriction or something similar. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, we're not taking public comment yet, but we will take public comment. Miriam, I see you have your hand up, but I think we're still just having a discussion with the commission and the applicant. But we will take it soon. So do people agree that maybe we should look at each of the conditions specifically? So here's the section. As I was saying, it's called post-construction / in perpetuity conditions, which seems like we're hearing from our lawyers that the in perpetuity part can't really be applied to just an order of conditions. So I'm in favor of removing that part from the definition of that section. That section should just be called post-construction conditions. How does the rest of the commission feel about that?
I agree.
Okay, so now number 27, if we get rid of that in perpetuity part in the heading, I think number 27 is fine because it doesn't say the word in perpetuity anywhere in it. And it really just refers to coming back to the commission, which is really what folks would have to do anyway, because it's our jurisdiction. Then number 28.
Wait a minute. I do have a question because it's probably going to come up as we go through the rest of these conditions.
Yeah.
But if the Wetlands Protection Act or our bylaw already calls for people to come in and deal with the Concom or request things from the Concom, why are we repeating it here? What's the value of repeating it in this post-construction conditions?
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep things simple and make as little changes as possible to the conditions as they are. I agree. I think when we were talking about this before, I brought up that if you scroll up to number 18, is it 18 of the general conditions or is it? I think it's number 18 of the, sorry, I'm probably making people nauseous. The just general conditions under the DEP. Which are in all of our orders. Nope, that's not it. Was it R number 18? R conditions. Yeah, sorry. It was 18 under the conditions under the bylaw. This order authorized only the activity described in the approved plans and approved documents. Any other additional activity in areas within the jurisdiction of the commission shall require separate review and approval by the commission or its agent. And we know that the majority of the site is within our jurisdiction. All right, so how does the commission feel about then removing number 27?
I'm inclined to recommend that. Yeah, I think that would be better.
I would say, the more information we can give, the homeowner and future homeowners, the better. And, I think, I would be in favor of removing the perpetual conditions thing, but keeping the conditions in place, which is in fact what the proponent is asking.
It's already in number 18, and it's already in our bylaw, so that if anybody wants to come back in the future, a new owner or even the existing owners, and construct or pave or whatever this one was for, permeable surfaces, they would have to come back and try to get a permit. So, you know, I'm not in favor of making documents long for the heck of it. It's already there.
I think where I'm at on this is we have a request and for 27 and for 28 was to delete the in perpetuity. This permit, I guess I look at it a little bit different, Jan, in that we're not crafting a new order of conditions for a new project. We're revising in response to a request. And so I would be supportive of making the amendment to the request for both 27, and I think we're up to 28. And that was deleting perpetuity.
I understand the point, but once you delete the in perpetuity, it's redundant.
Yeah, but I think as Scott's saying, at this point, we really should just be responding to what's being requested by the applicant to be changed. That's a good point, and in the end, with new permits that we're issuing, we should really go through and look at the general conditions that DEP has in their conditions, and then look at our general conditions and look for redundancy. I agree, but I think in this case, we're just looking for making the changes that are being requested upon us. So number 28. Future landscaping within 50 feet of the protected A-series bordering vegetated wetland shall include only indigenous herbaceous plants, shrubs, and trees. No plantings of invasive is allowed anywhere on the property. Again, all we're being asked to remove is the in perpetuity part to that statement. Yeah. Okay. 29, no, not 29. 27, 28, 30. All right, so 30 really gets into the marking of the no disturb zone, which they have done. Built with concrete.
I did have a question on this one. The deed restriction presumably is using the same markers, and I didn't see where in the deed restriction it protected the pins and the stationary boulders, and so that was a question that I had. Because the deed restriction itself is in perpetuity, and these are what are defining the area of no disturb, or what that's what it says here.
Well, if I didn't make it clear, we're not asking for any changes to the pins or the boulders in this. We're asking for the in perpetuity language to be deleted, and for some reasonable ability for them, as I use as an example, put a bench down by the river and be able to sit there and enjoy it, as opposed to not being able to even step in that area.
Yeah, and I'm wondering that I hear what you're saying. I'm wondering if we were to remove this piece, the deed restriction itself. I mean, typically that would be marked, or it would be referenced in such a way as to what is being the area of the property that is under a deed restriction. And typically it would say that you can't disturb the markings that denote the area that's under a restriction. And that language seems to be here in the order of conditions. My question is it in the deed restriction itself?
Right, you're talking about the sentence that says, the applicant shall maintain and repair the markers and boulders as needed.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, well, when we get down to the deed, we can look at that
Okay,
and see if it's included. Future activities shall be allowed that involve. Um. Okay, so what they're requesting for this one is delete basically the in perpetuity part and allow for mutually agreeable and limited use and activity within the area, such as the placement of a bench within the area so that the owners could sit and enjoy the riverfront view. That's what Jim was saying. And so how does the commission feel about that? This is clearly saying no disturb, mark the no disturb, maintain the line, and yeah, no future activities shall be allowed that involve clearing, grading, except for what's under the condition, activities required to eliminate safety hazards, maintain the driveway culvert, control invasive species, and then no dumping in a disturbed area.
I mean, to me, I think, well, I'll just go back. I do think that the maintenance of the pins and the boulders to run concurrent with the perpetual deed restriction are important. As far as placement of a bench or a structure, if the deed restriction itself, I think I'd have to go back and look at that language. I think it talked about placing of structures as not being allowed. And I think how I would prefer to use that is rather than start to get into amending the deed restriction. I think that could be a separate item to come to presumably back before the commission to really just talk about like, what are we talking about there? Because structures have a way of, sometimes it's for like a simple bench. I'm sure, or at least speaking for myself, I don't see that would be a problem to permit something like that. I think we could also concoct, all the other things that can start to go along with that. And before you know it, the bench is a gazebo and more structures, more things that get built on. So I prefer to handle that as a separate request, keeping the deed restriction as is, and to have the language that goes with maintaining the limits to the deed restriction in place in perpetuity. But I'd be curious what other commissioners thought.
If I may, Chairman Wilson,
Yeah,
the language in the DEP article that they wrote specifically about amendments states that if a determination is made that the project purpose or scope has changed substantially, or the interests specified in the Wetlands Protection Act are not protected, then the issuing authority should not issue the amendment, should require the filing of a new notice of intent. So I think the bench was not something that was envisioned in the original order that was issued, the unappealed order. So I concur with Scott that that sounds like a separate matter that could be applied for separately. And I think we'd just be shooting from the hip too much to just put it in here. We don't know what size bench, where it's going to be, etc. So it I think it would be inappropriate to put that language in at this time.
Mhm.
Okay, well, we
And
did put language that, mutually agreeable with the commission. So if Kathy's okay and the commission is okay with the other amendments we've asked, perhaps we could put together a presentation to supplement that and submit it as a new filing. But I have to, I'm saying that without having Kathy's authorization.
We're okay with not including the bench if it gives everybody heartburn. Where the bench is located right now is right along the edge of the boulders on the opposite side of the protected area. So we're okay if you're not comfortable putting that in. We're not planning to put anything else down there. No gazebos, no building, no disturbance, nothing. So if the bench gives people agita, take it out.
And just to clarify, thank you, Kathy, for that. I think, just to reiterate, I think what Bob and where I was coming from, I'm not sure that, the bench itself is of concerning or giving heartburn. I just think making that more clear exactly what we're talking about and not have that be just kind of lumped in and have that as something that we would deal with full understanding of what was being proposed. I think that's what we're saying, but not saying that we would entertain a conversation around that.
Okay, thank you.
okay, well, so the last sentence, I think maybe we just strike out of number 30. This condition shall survive the expiration of this order and shall be included as a continuing condition in perpetuity in the certificate of compliance. If we've got the deed restriction, and this is a discussion with the commission, if we've got the deed restriction, possibly we don't need to include any of these conditions as ongoing conditions in the certificate of compliance. That's my thought, but maybe as we go through them, we can kind of look a little bit more at each one of them, but this one is certainly talked about in the deed restriction. So that last sentence, maybe we take out. We certainly have to take this word out. All right, so that was number 30. That was a good discussion. 31. 31, the marking pins and boulders identified in 30 should be inspected by the commission before any sale of the property in perpetuity. The applicant shall instruct all agents to explain these markers to buyers, lessees, landscapers, and all persons taking over the property from the applicant. The intent of this condition is to mitigate the adverse effects of prior development activities and to protect the riverfront habitat, including shading. What I'm hearing from the lawyers is this is the kind of language that we just can't be saying. It just doesn't, it's really not legal.
Correct.
And, and in the end, I don't, yeah, I think with the deed restriction that's the typical way of doing it. And that's the legal way of doing it. What do other commissioners think?
So you want to strike 31 completely?
That would be my
Yeah.
suggestion.
Sounds right to me.
Bob and Scott?
I guess, I mean, to me, again, the request was deleting the in perpetuity, which I think is the part that is problematic, and town council also concurs that that language is problematic. So I would be good deleting in perpetuity requirement from condition 31.
I would support that. That is a request of the applicant.
So are you in support of getting rid of all of 31?
The- Speaking only for myself, just the perpetuity language.
Shall be inspected by the commission before any sale of the property. If you don't include the perpetuity, that sentence doesn't really make sense, right? It
Well, I
kind of goes with perpetuity.
I think
Just
Donna
like-
has something to say here.
Well, if I could, I
Yes,
think
Scott.
the we would be inspecting these, with a deed restriction, we typically inspect them every year. And so I would imagine that we would be doing that as a matter of course. And so I actually think it could be confusing to, I don't think it matters, honestly. Because I think under the deed restriction, my hope, and when we get there, I think it's going to be important to keep the deed restriction along with the maintenance of the markers, and that the commission would be doing that as per our responsibility on a routine basis. And so, but I'm just dealing with the request before us was to delete in perpetuity. So I'm concurring with the request that's being made.
That's not helpful, Scott, because I'm talking about language. So if we say, so you're saying we should say something like the marking pins and boulders identified in condition 30 above shall be inspected by the commission on a routine basis? Something like that, instead of saying before the sale of property? Because sale of property to me implies perpetuity, because the property is going to be sold for the forever and ever and ever, on and off. I understand what you're saying. I like the routine inspections, especially if it's a deed restriction kind of thing. So maybe that would be, again, my suggestion, shall be inspected by the commission on a routine basis, according to the deed restriction.
Yeah, I'd be supportive of that.
Okay.
I concur with that.
I don't want to prolong this, but routine basis is not a legal term. What does that mean? Is it once a
How
year?
about,
Decade?
how about annual?
I'm sorry?
How about annually?
Well, that's up to you. That you have to take that responsibility and do it annually when you commit to that.
Or we could just not, maybe we don't put a date. We don't put any, because annually could also be interpreted as in perpetuity. We could just say, shall be inspected by the commission. Period.
Well, I think
I'm-
I'll defer to your counsel on that.
Right,
But-
periodically.
The,
Periodically, I could live with that. I mean, the request that the applicants have made, it was just to delete in perpetuity. So
But I think it's important when you read these and you're going through this exercise, yes, to do what the applicant, stick to basically what the applicant's requested, but having a requirement that an applicant shall instruct all agents, what agents, who are you even talking about? How do you approve that? How do you make sure that's happening? That these markers to buyers, lessees, landscapers, and all persons taking over the property from the applicant, whatever that means. I mean, there's some really broad, vague language in here that's really problematical. And I think that I don't disagree with going over these and not necessarily taking out ones that the Salvadors haven't even asked to and stuff. But I do think when you come upon language that's so broad and vague or so overbroad in conditions, if that cleaning it up some is not overstepping the point of this hearing. I think that if you went to every single condition, even though you were requested to look at 6, I think that if you really changed conditions as far as protecting certain areas or the importance of the boulders and that kind of thing, I would agree completely that that's overreaching the point of this hearing. But there's certainly, if you're looking at a condition this closely and considering it, that certain language in here is really overbroad. And I think at least it's worth a discussion, up to all of you ultimately.
and
Hey, Kathy, sorry, Jim, Kathy.
Just a quick comment that I think the commissioners who haven't seen the property, their minds will be put at ease once they realize what these things look like. These boulders are massive. Now that the house is there, we wouldn't be able to get equipment there to move them. And the pins, the markers are in concrete 2 feet or 3 feet, 2
They're
feet
in the
into the
ground.
ground. They're not going anywhere. And I think if once you see them, when you come to do the post-construction site visit, I think it will put your mind at ease a little bit more about, our understanding of where the protection begins and why it's important to have it protected that way.
Okay.
And further to Donna's point about language in section 31, it's unusual for a condition to have an explanatory introductory phrase like, this is our intention. Well, what your intention is different than what the condition is. And I think that language is vague and confusing as well. So I know what we try to limit our requests to be specific, but I do agree with your counsel that if you have the opportunity to clean up language that is vague or inappropriate, or that it would be nice to do so. Otherwise, we'll all be back at some point in the future trying to clean this up again. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, I just want to comment that, like, this last sentence, the intent of this condition, I think this is what he was talking about, to mitigate the adverse effects of prior development and protect the riverfront, including shading. Well, great, like that belongs more in our bylaw, talking about why we're doing anything. That's more of a like, hey, let's educate people. Like I've never seen something like that in a condition. Conditions really need to be extremely straightforward. You're telling somebody what to do. So again, I just, in a way, some of the language just gets me a little bit with these, that just is not something that should be in there, but.
And I don't disagree, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering, I'm looking at the request from the applicant and I said I was in favor of the change the applicant was asking to make. I think what I'm hearing now is the applicant would like to change what the request is for 31, and I'm wondering what their request is. Is there a specific language that you would like to see? The request is to delete in perpetuity. Are you asking to modify your request for number 31?
Mr. Khan, are you talking to me? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Oh, well, again, without having cleared this with my client, if we go through these and there's general consensus on things that the commission agrees should be either deleted or rewritten to make it less ambiguous and to make it cleaner for all parties' benefit, we could do that, and you could then hopefully finally approve it. But if Kathy would like to take a half a loaf now and come back some more, I would. It's her property and it's her investment. So, Kathy, where are you on that?
Well, I just thought that I know in past meetings, conditions have been modified, certificates of compliance have been issued, after having discussions. It doesn't seem to me that just because our petition only addresses in perpetuity language, that, to Donna's point, we can't clean up some of the language while we're having the conversation, rather than to waste your time and our time, going back over and over and over again, meeting to get to the same point.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at, Kathy. I'm trying to understand. So there was a written request that said, we're looking to make this mod. I think what I'm hearing is that's not the mod we would like to make. We would like to make a different mod. And I think we can do that here. I'm just trying to understand what, rather than have the commission, us try to guess what your request is and approve it. can you articulate what edits you would like to see made to 31 now, or would you like to come back and do that at a subsequent time?
Well, Kathy, we could submit a more robust request for amendments rather than just in the perpetuity, and have it ready for your next meeting, if that's okay with you, Kathy. But I think we'd want to have some assurance from the commission that they're on the same wavelength that we are and your town council is about where we're going with this and what the outcome.
Jim, I'm not sure that's fair to ask of the commission. I think that what the commission is saying is that they understand that Kathy's point, that in modifying conditions, that lots of times that's a discussion, not just a document put before the commission. But I don't know that the commission can give you any assurances
Well, that was
of future modifications. In this one, we've already talked about the fact that people wanted to say the marking pins and boulders identified in condition number 30 above shall be inspected by the commission periodically, because that gets rid of the language you requested before any sale of the property in perpetuity. But it still puts puts everybody on notice that the commission has the right to go in and look at the boulders and look at the pins and make sure that they're being maintained, because they're so critical to the protection of that area. So I think all I was saying is that if we're modifying that section by sort of rewriting sentence 1, and you were asked by a commission member, do you want any other modifications in this paragraph? I mean, Beth certainly said the intent of this condition is really not something that should be in conditions. That either goes in your bylaw or your regulations, but it's not. How do you give a certificate of compliance on the intent of conditions? If everybody's looking at these, they should be looking at them and saying, when we go to do our post-construction inspection, how do we give a certificate of compliance on this condition? That doesn't mean that we should revise every single one here. I think that if all of you want to come back and continue to refine these, that may be something, but I think we're sort of working on 31. We might as well, if everybody's inclined to, get 31 done and then move on and see if there's any others that we even want to amend like this, outside of getting rid of in perpetuity.
I think that's fair, Donna.
Okay, so looking at 31, if we do change that first sentence to say, the marking pins and boulders identified in condition 30 above shall be inspected by the commission periodically. And then we leave the rest of the language, the applicant shall instruct all agents to explain these markers to buyers, lessees, landscapers, and all other persons taking over the property from the applicant. Is the applicant okay with that?
Yeah, I think the last sentence, though, I think everyone's in agreement that that sentence is inappropriate in a condition, the intent of this condition.
Okay, other commissioners, are you okay with taking out the last sentence?
I would just like to, I guess I am, but Beth, you've been in the business long enough that you've seen places that have had protective barriers that are taken down once a new tenant moves in. So I think the intent of maybe you and the different people that crafted this was to prevent that from happening, and I think that's why that word that the intent is spelled out, so it's clear to everybody why this condition was put in, so that a new buyer wouldn't automatically undo all the good things that the previous buyer had done.
I guess so. I see it as saying the intent of this condition is to mitigate the adverse effects of prior development activities, almost referring to the enforcement that happened. That they went and they did stuff that they weren't supposed, they had not asked for our permission. And some future homeowner, I don't think is quite gonna get that out of that sentence, you know, they're not gonna know about the enforcement. And then it does say, and to protect riverfront habitat, which is kind of the general idea. Including shading, which again is just sort of the general idea of all the protecting we do. Yeah, I just agree that I don't think intent and belongs with a condition.
I appreciate the applicant clarifying the request for 31 and with the suggestion to change perpetuity and perpetuity to periodically and removing the last sentence. I am supportive of that.
I'm a little concerned with that suggestion that we're going to inspect this property even periodically through time. It almost, to me, it makes it seem like we're doing some sort of easement on the property. I'm not sure if that's what we want to do here.
I think that's what we have in the deed restriction.
We have an easement?
You do not have an easement.
It's
No.
Oh, no, you don't have an easement.
Is a deed, the deed
Very clear.
restriction, right? That's a perpetual deed restriction on the property. And is that what was filed?
Right, but that's not an easement, but it is a
No.
deed restriction.
And that deed restriction, at least in other properties that we have, where we have similar deed restrictions, we do annual monitoring of those deed restrictions, right?
Do we have many of those instances?
I think aren't we going on one coming up in
Is
Coming
that
up
not
in
an easement?
October? And I think we're
Let's
just
be really
asked
clear.
for additional. deed
Let's be
restriction.
very clear. A deed restriction, an easement, conservation restriction are the town having an interest in land that has to be done by a recorded deed. An order of conditions is a form of deed restriction because it's a permanent document in the registry, basically expressing the order of conditions on the property. And then if those conditions are ongoing, they clearly restrict the use of the property. The Wetlands Protection Act, your Shutesbury bylaw, all restrict uses of property. They're not easements, they're not deed restrictions. They restrict uses of property though, by your laws.
On this one,
and so
Donna, I'm just
they're-
wondering,
Sure, go ahead, sorry.
yeah, no, I don't mean to interrupt. I'm just wondering, at the very bottom here, could you flip down, Beth?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're all talking the same thing.
Are you look, oh, you want to look at the deed restriction?
I want to look at the deed restriction. So I'm flash forwarding and not talking about the order of conditions. I'm not talking about the Shutesbury, our wetlands bylaw or the Wetland Protection Act. I'm talking about this deed restriction here. And my question and my understanding is that this does perpetually restrict the land to do these things, and it is the responsibility to periodically inspect this property to ensure that that these activities are not taking place on those properties.
So that
Because
is my question.
they are
How often does-
ongoing compliance requirements
Correct.
for
Okay.
this property.
Okay,
And
thank you.
I'm asking a beginner question here.
Sure,
So
Janice,
how
go
often does the Conservation Commission actually go out and review compliance on properties? Are we doing that as a routine? I haven't done it yet.
So we have a number of conservation restrictions. You were on our walk with, off of Leverett Road where we're being asked to hold a conservation restriction.
Yep.
And all of those sort of, larger pieces of land that's the entire piece of land that it comes under a conservation restriction. The actual document talks about, mostly it's often annual inspections of those properties. And Scott is sort of in the process of inventorying a lot of that right now and just making a good schedule for us of those properties. I guess a good question for Donna, and for Jim is the difference between a deed restriction, a conservation restriction, and a conservation easement, because we've all seen them all, and it does get slightly confusing as to what's allowed, sort of like something like a deed restriction I know is something that follows a piece of property, but we don't own the property. There's a deed restriction put on it for the owners who own it. How much of a right do we have to do things like inspections and things like that, especially if we don't actually write it in the deed restriction?
I think so. Let's talk about the most onerous control of a property is a conservation restriction. And if you've all read the conservation restrictions, you know that both really limits use of the property. You know that it puts a duty on you to make sure that initial survey of the condition of the property is basically not changed, and that all of the prohibited activities don't take place on the property. So that's a duty on you to make sure that conservation restriction's enforced and in effect, and a real restriction on the owners as to all the prohibited activities. An easement is a shared interest in property. Conservation easement would be not necessarily restricting the owner's use of the property so much as that their use of the property can't interfere with your conservation easement. So it's a little less onerous than a conservation restriction where they're prohibited from doing most things, to basically saying their ownership of their use of the property can't interfere with your conservation easement. So if your conservation easement says that they can't build on it, then they can't do that. But if it doesn't, then they may be able to build, but they couldn't in such a way that would interfere with the conservation easement. Conservation easements are not terribly, I mean, I don't think most real estate attorneys would use them because I think that they're not as clear as conservation restrictions. And so I think it's not always clear what the real legal restrictions on the property are.
Mhm.
The final one is really essentially your order of conditions, which is essentially a permanent record for the property that basically acknowledges there's wetlands, acknowledges that those boundaries, acknowledges that within those boundaries, the Wetland Protection Act and your bylaw are controlling law, and prohibited practices like under 130, dredging, filling, blah, 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 cannot be done in those areas. Your bylaw comes in and says cannot be done within 100 feet of buffer areas. Those are all restrictions on property that you have by law. You don't need it in a deed. You don't need it in order of conditions. That's your power. That's what you have over every property, whether they've ever come before you or not, whether there's ever an order of conditions, anything. That's what you have under the law. So, but you also have the authority to do ongoing conditions. And that's why when Beth uses the difference between in perpetuity and ongoing conditions, it's really critical. Because when you have something like the sensitive area right by the river, you forever have jurisdiction over that land. And they're forever subject to your bylaw and to the Wetlands Protection Act. And so this deed restriction that the Salvadors have granted you in these order of conditions is essentially a grant of ongoing onerous conditions on their property that they acknowledge are there. I
Okay.
hope that explains itself.
And
Um,
and inspecting them, what I'm hearing, because I'm just looking at it, it's really, that's super helpful, Donna. I think that here it's restricting certain things from happening, and it's outlined in the order of the conditions, and the order of conditions spelled out who would be doing it. And I think what we talked about doing is saying periodically.
Right. And so, yes, so the truth of the matter is it says that you don't ever have to do it to answer Janice's ultimate question, I think. But you have the right to. And certainly if you hear that Joe's brought his tractor down, you know, you're gonna go out and you're gonna look. But it's like Kathy said, the house is there, can't even get to some of those boulders anymore because of the house and the construction on the property. And so, you know, if you're driving by and you see the boulders sitting there, because you can't miss them, they're huge, you know, you know they're in place, and you don't necessarily have to go out there purposely annually and walk by every single boulder and look at every single tag. If you go by and there's some sort of horrible rain event, and you go by and you see the boulders aren't there past the driveway, past the parking area, you'd probably want to go inspect. And you have the right to.
Thanks, Donna. Super helpful.
yeah, very helpful.
I do like that clarification, and I like the fact that it doesn't pin us into having to go and see the property, you know, every year, every other month, whatever, you know, as needed is kind of what we're left with, which is good.
All right. So
Jim, do you disagree with anything I said there? Or can clarify it more?
You directing that to me, Donna?
Yeah.
No, I don't. You described the deed restriction as onerous, and I would maybe take exception with onerous from a legal standpoint. It is what it is, and it's a legal document that in which the property owner agrees to certain restrictions placed on its property. Hopefully they're always reasonable. Some aren't at times, but you know, it's Kathy and Joe certainly understand that they have obligations and duties that they've committed to by developing this property, and they're doing it. I think towns, particularly smaller towns, should be careful not to take on too much homework and then not do things and then get themselves in a pickle 10, 12 years later when they haven't done anything, and they say, well, you know, you didn't enforce this. And, you know, so I think your advice there is prescient for them to not go down that road. And that's why, you know, if we can accomplish that, we'd like to make these changes that we've discussed. We just finished 31, 32. Again, we were concerned about, to get my numbers straight here. Yeah, just taking out the in perpetuity clause. And again, it's, you know, not necessary. And then we went to 33, and that's where we've been, you know, I think we do have some issue with that about the requirement that the applicant, in this case now the Salvadors, but future buyers, have to submit notifications in writing that they understand the terms of this conditions and that sort of thing. And I think that is overreaching for both 33 and 34. And I'm happy to have that dialogue with you if you think I'm off base on that, but I do think it is overreaching. And what if an applicant, a person who buys your house refuses to do it? You know, so you get into all those little legal tussles. Anyway, have I answered? I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, thank you. So are we on 33 now?
I hope so.
Yes, we're on 33. All right, so 33, the request is delete the in perpetuity requirement from condition 33. And the requirement that the applicant shall provide a letter with an original signature to the Conservation Committee notifying the committee of the transfer and affirm that they have notified the grantee about the perpetual restriction bound to the property.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, me too. So let's see, part of this shall provide a letter with permission. So that's almost the entire number
It
33.
is the entire 33.
That's what we're saying. Okay. And I'm in support of that. Just want to make sure the rest of the commission is. Scott's got the thumbs up. Bob, are you okay? Jan?
Yeah, honestly, it seems a very minor thing to me. When you sell a house, there's 1,000 things you do. This one is just simply a letter with a signature. So I think it would go a long way to let people know that they can't modify everything about this new house, but I'm comfortable to sit back on this one.
Okay. Jan? No comment from Jan. We're moving on. Okay, thanks, Bob. All right, number 34.
That is the mirror image of the putting the onus on the property owner, and it's putting on the onus of a buyer. And as I said before, I'm concerned that if a buyer chooses not to comply with that, what impact that would have. And it's again overreaching. It's the Conservation Commission interfering with the ordinary transfer of real estate through the Massachusetts rules and regulations and statutes. And you have all the protections in place. You have deed restrictions, you have conditions, you have everything in place, and to put this on, again, I think is overreaching. But and I would invite Donna to comment on that as well.
Donna, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I don't disagree with Jim. I just think it's, I think that the whole point of orders of conditions being filed in the registry is so that in fact, that, new buyers see the orders of conditions and their attorneys explain them to make sure. And I don't know that putting as a condition in your order of conditions that the order of conditions be given to the buyer isn't somewhat duplicate. I think that if you want to put in something like this, you can put the Conservation Commission will notify. When the assessors get notification, property transfers, you can notify people, you can remind people, you can send out messages to the entire town, once a year, put it in the Shutesbury newsletter saying, I just want to remind all owners of property in Shutesbury that if you have orders of condition on your property, you need to make sure you're abiding by them. You have all that authority to do that. And so and how do you do a certificate of compliance on this?
I don't
What
think
do you do if you don't get it? Are you gonna haul them in and find them in violation of the order of conditions?
Amen is what I say to that, because it's just a quagmire.
I frankly think it's ridiculously simple. It's a letter with a stamp, and it's just another thing that somebody does when they sell a house. It would put a buyer on notice that hey, there is this order of conditions thing, and guess what? You signed off on it, that you received it. So I see it as a very minor 5-minute job, and I think it would have a payoff, and that somebody could not be able to say that they weren't aware of the conditions, which I'm sure in your job, Beth, you've heard many times.
Well, if I may give you an example, if your grandmother passed away and you or your her grandchildren were selling the house and they made a deal. They get the purchase and sale agreement, and then they get to the closing, and their lawyer for the buyers runs the title and says, "Oh, by the way, you have to give this letter." And they say, "Oh, well, I'm not going to give that letter. I know about it, but I'm not going to give them a letter." And then they say the deal falls apart and someone's lost the sale. And then you're back to square one, and that sale might have been important for a bunch of variety of monetary reasons. It's not a 5-minute stamp and just do it. It's a lawsuit. And why, that's just one example.
Well, that sounds like an attorney that didn't read through the order of conditions, because it's right there in black and white. It's a stamp, it's a letter, it's a signature, and I really don't see this as onerous at all.
No.
How are you gonna enforce it, Bob?
Well, if the letter is sent, then it's compliant, correct?
If it's not sent,
No, but if it's sent, it's compliant. If it's not sent, then it's not compliant.
And what are you gonna do?
Then the person would have to comply, which is to provide the required notification.
So you're gonna bring an enforcement order?
Certainly, the idea behind this would be to prevent an enforcement order by making sure that all parties are informed that there is a order of conditions in power over this particular property.
That's the point of recording the order of conditions. So the buyer doesn't want to send this letter and they don't send it, and you write them and say, you have required to get us this letter. You didn't get us this letter. Where are you going from there? Enforcement order?
I think this silly letter purpose is to prevent enforcement orders of people who buy a house, don't understand what the order of conditions is, and then proceed to clear the entire riverfront of an area like this, which
Bob,
I'm certain has happened.
I get why it's in there. I get that, you have it in there because you want to ensure that sellers of properties for 33 and buyers of property for 34 are absolutely on notice. Why in this order of conditions is that here and not in every order of conditions? Because you want buyers and sellers for every order of conditions to know, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
So
And
is this in
this
every
is a
one of
good.
your order of conditions?
Yeah, I can't speak to that. Again, I'm the new guy on the commission, but I do think this is a way that somebody who has signed off on this can't say that they weren't aware of it. And when the bulldozer comes in and takes down the riverfront, then in that enforcement action, if it happens, hopefully it's prevented, then you've got the ability to show that this was done knowingly. And really, I think I'm going around in circles here. I don't see this as particularly onerous. But I will stand and listen
And
to the
let me
rest of the
say this,
commissioners.
I don't think this is illegal. I think the commission can have this in there. So it's up to all of you. It's not illegal to have it in there. The in perpetuity, I'm very concerned about, but the requirement itself, it's not, it's certainly, it's certainly not an illegal condition.
Scott?
I think if the request of removing this, I really appreciate what Bob is saying. And my own experience working on some of these, I do think it's surprising how many people buy land without the use of attorneys and don't do a title search, and then they end up with problems down the road. And so I think this is a good practice to have that in there. It could help all parties, down the road. That being said, the condition is going to remain on the deed regardless of whether or not there's notification. And if there were a violation down the road and discovered during inspection, it would give us a way forward. So I'm, in the interest of working through this, I'm supportive of moving forward with the request made by the applicant, but I do appreciate what Bob is saying in terms of the reason for this is, I think, to help to avoid headaches. So if we do remove it, I hope future owners, when they're selling the property, they make people aware.
Yeah, I guess my thoughts are, with most of our orders of conditions, we don't go as far as to do a deed restriction. And to me, that's the part, considering as we've all said, that these conditions, again, if it's a condition, apparently it's only good for 30 years. Whereas the deed restriction is really perpetual and forever. So maybe what we really want to see, we need to put in that deed restriction. So I guess that's how I feel about it, is that I'm okay also removing this number 34 and making sure that what we have in the deed restriction is what we really want to see, staying with the title or the deed, forever, basically.
I can agree to that.
Okay. All right, we got through all of those. Do we want to look at the deed restriction? I think maybe we'll take some public comment at this moment. Miriam, you've had your hand up forever.
Yeah, I would like to make a comment. I'm here as a member of the public, and I'm only expressing my own personal opinion here. It's concerning to me, and I'm disappointed that I've had to wait over 45 minutes to make this comment. I think I'm entitled to be treated with a modicum of courtesy and respect as a visitor to this meeting. And I just want to object to the commission allowing an ad hominem attack on a member of the public and allowing it to go unchallenged. I was accused of some improper conduct earlier in the meeting tonight, and the comment went by without any challenge or correction from the commission. I had my hand raised, and according to Robert's rules, I should have been allowed to be recognized to respond and rebut the attack on my character in real time. So I'm disappointed that I had to wait. And I also want to just say for the record that I disagree with the characterization that was proffered. The commission, as far as I'm aware, was acting in good faith and was doing the best it could to be reasonable in the past with a permit. The permit was voted on unanimously by the commissioners present. And also the applicants came back to amend their permit, and the commission agreed to the modifications they requested. I don't believe, and I might be wrong, but I don't believe anyone on the commission was aware of any of the objections that are being raised tonight. It sounds like some modifications to the permit are in order, but the original language was written with the best of intentions. I also want to remind the commission that we issued this permit in 2022 without advice of counsel, because I did reach out to town council for advice, and she recused herself, having just purchased a property from the applicant at the time. I would like to feel welcome to attend Concom meetings in the future, and I hope I'm not put in this position again. Thank you.
Well, I would just like to say that, no, I 100% agree that the commission, when these conditions were put together, it was under good faith, and, we did, the best that we could at that moment. And I'm sorry that you feel that way, Miriam. You're a member of the public, and I was simply running the meeting the way I thought you're supposed to, where the commission has a discussion with the applicant prior to having public comment, just so that the commission and the applicant can kind of really have a good discussion, and then allowing public comment. It's just how I thought meetings were supposed to be run. So I'm sorry that you felt that way.
I think the difference is when there's an ad hominem attack on a member of the public. I think the public person who's being attacked has the right to respond. And I did raise my hand and ask to be recognized. So I've been waiting patiently and respectfully, but I don't think I should have had to. And honestly, as the commissioners who are present, I look to you to also create an atmosphere and climate that's welcoming and is safe for people to participate. And I would not, as the former chair, have been comfortable not saying anything if somebody had been attacked who was a member of the public. Anyway, enough said, and we can move on.
All right. I'm sorry that you feel that way. I mean, I will take that into account, and I'll be more cognizant of these things as chair. I'm sorry. Mike S., you had your hand up.
Hi, Beth. It's Anna Mancebo, Mike's wife, 26 Lake Drive. I've been listening very intently about the conversation at hand and the language of perpetuity. My question would be, there were a number of projects that were reviewed and processed during the same time as the Salvadors in 2022. And the former chair and the members, from my recollection, the conversation centered around issuing conditions that were more boilerplate and standard, and I was going to make that sort of a standard for all projects going forward. So all of those projects now have language in them around perpetuity. And I'm wondering how the commission today is going to notify those project and owners about this new ruling. In fact, if you all rule to remove the language of in perpetuity as illegal. That's my question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I don't see it as such a broad issue because since I've been chair, we have our standard conditions, our sort of boilerplate conditions, and they don't include a whole lot of perpetuity language. I guess my thought is that there's not that many out there, and we can certainly take a look and see, but I don't. We don't necessarily issue that many orders of conditions, a year. This is tiny little Shutesbury. So we can certainly take a look back at that time frame and see if we see any other issues.
Yeah,
like
I just want to understand the process. We were affected, and so selfishly, I'm asking on behalf of myself, and I know of several other people around the lake that were going through review at the same time. So I think if you looked within that time frame, you would see all of these that you were looking at removing and removing wholly. So 31 or 33, 34 were applied to other projects, and language of in perpetuity is throughout our conditions. So if you come back to me with a process, I'm happy to write a letter requesting a review, a hearing, whatever you would like me to do, but I would like to put that to the commission tonight of how I can go about that and others that might be affected.
Yeah, well, if you feel like you were affected, then you can definitely email me with your concerns.
Okay, great.
Fine.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Kathy?
I would just like to apologize publicly to Miriam DeFont, since she was offended by my use of the term overzealous. I used that word because at the time we were going through our process, several others, as Anna mentioned, were going through the same processes and having the same struggles and feeling like we were being asked, we were being put through a process to protect the wetlands, which we all agree need to be protected. But it was zealous is the only word I can come up with. I'm sure Miriam probably has a thesaurus there and could come up with a dozen others, but our feeling as applicants was that this process was going above and beyond what was necessary to protect the wetlands. And so that's why I used that adjective. And I apologize, Miriam, I'm sorry, but the 45-minute wait was shorter than some of the waits that we endured waiting as members of the public during some of the Concom meetings we attended back in the day. So that's pretty standard practice. I'm sorry you had to wait that long, but at least now you know how the rest of us felt when we were waiting. That's all.
Tom Seifert?
Good evening. Thank you, Beth. And thanks, Commission, for having this discussion tonight. May I ask two questions and make a third point, please? And just start with the third point, because it wasn't going to be a point, but it's unfortunately become a little bit highlighted. I've been at other Concom discussions where it's become personal. And in this instance, I think it's really important to remember that the commission is a commission. It's a unit of a group of people. So I would really caution any singling out historically, future, present of any one commissioner, because it weakens the power of the commission as a team. And then I had two questions, please, procedurally. Would the Conservation Commission be willing to have the town council respond to whether she is acquainted with the applicant and has a conflict of interest to discuss this matter? And then the second question is this a hearing? It wasn't listed on the agenda as such, and I was surprised to hear that word used tonight. And I would have been prepared for a hearing if I had known there would be an actual hearing. Those are my two questions, please, about the conflict of interest. And if there is one, was any notification given like to the town clerk or anything? And then is this an actual hearing, please?
Yeah, I can answer. Oh, can I do two and then you can do one?
Sure.
Donna? This is a actual hearing to amend an order of conditions. Applicant first comes to a meeting where the commission decides whether or not an amendment is appropriate, and then they're basically instructed to hold a public hearing. So that's what this meeting is. A butter notification was issued, legal ad was posted. So this is the public hearing for looking into amending the order of conditions.
Was that supposed to be on the agenda as a public hearing?
I mean, our agendas don't come straight out ever and call something a public hearing.
I think the word hearing is a critical word. I just wanted to make sure. I actually heard 2 meetings ago when the Concom had the discussion about this permit that if they did approve anything, there would be a public hearing stage, and then the word hearing was never used after that. And then the agenda tonight didn't, it just said request. It didn't say hearing. So I thought it was going to be a continuation of the discussion and that the hearing was going to be after tonight.
Well, I think at our last meeting, we made the decision to have the hearing, and I think we probably said that it was going to be at our next meeting.
Okay, I thought I attended and I don't remember hearing, like public hearing for 31. Just wanted
Okay,
to
well,
caution it.
yeah, well, it is a public hearing.
Okay. I didn't know if it was in. Thanks, but the other question is still there. Thank you.
Yep, okay. Donna, did you want to?
Sure. Just so everybody understands, when the Salvadors first came before the Conservation Commission, I had just brought 11 King Road from them. And so there was not an actual conflict of interest because I did not have a financial interest in their property. But because that transaction was ongoing, it was clear that people might feel there was a bias, and so I stepped back. I've owned that property now for some years. I have no other financial dealings with the Salvador. And so while there wasn't an actual conflict of interest, there was certainly an ongoing business transaction, and it wouldn't have been appropriate for me to be advising the Concom at that time.
Does that answer your questions, Tom?
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it. It was just a
Welcome.
nagging question. Very much. Thank you.
Okay. Miriam?
Was there a legal ad and a butters notifications for tonight?
Yeah.
I just noticed on the town website that there was nothing on the active projects about the proposed changes. Usually there would be the plans for an amendment put up on the website.
Yeah, we haven't been necessarily keeping up with the webpage because we haven't had a land use clerk.
Problem is
So
butters notices and the legal ads say that you can go to the website to get copies of the documents, don't they?
no, I changed the language. So it basically says, like in the legal ad, it says contact the Conservation Commission, and then I have, the email or the
Fine.
phone number. But now we have a new land use clerk, and I told him about the webpage. And I'm very much hoping that he is excited about doing things with it. Tom?
Thanks. That was part of my point as well. I wasn't able to find any information about the permit on the town website. So thanks for clearing that up. I hope that in the future it will be available.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we got through 34. This is the language that's in the deed restriction. Is everyone comfortable with that? I know, Scott, you had concerns about maintenance of the 100-foot, no disturb boundary, so the rocks and the pins.
Yeah, I
Scott?
do. Well, I'm wondering, with the order of conditions as we said that they would be there and would be subject to periodic inspection, and then we state here that you can't do work in those areas. I do think it would be more clear if we were to include that same language about maintaining the boulders and markings in the deed restriction to make it more clear of the area that is the the area that the prohibited activities would not be allowed in.
Okay.
So if we were to take that same language, I think from the order condition and put it in the deed restriction, I think that would address my concern.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm wondering if, so one thing I wanted to do tonight was actually have a version of this that was editable, but I couldn't, I didn't have time to track it down. So one suggestion would be that I produce a red line version of this, and we meet again in 2 weeks. But this is a question for the applicant, if they would be willing to, if that would just make it more clear, and better for folks if we continue the hearing till the next meeting. It's really up to the applicant, actually, if that would be better for them.
I think that's fine.
Okay.
And Beth, would you like me to send you a Word document that you can edit?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, well, I'll do that in the morning.
Good. Does the commission support that idea? Produce a red line version of everything we just talked about, and then go over it one more time at our next meeting.
Just to be clear, do you want me to redline it or do you want me to send it so you can redline it? I'm happy with either way.
I think at this point, I think we kind of made some good decisions tonight, so I think I'd like to redline it. If that's, if you just send me a
Yep.
editable version of it,
And I'll copy Donna on that.
all right. All right, is that, other commissioners, look, you know what, I'll stop sharing this.
I think that sounds great.
All right, thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you for your time and patience. Very much
Whoa,
appreciated.
whoa, 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 whoa.
Oh.
Just to be clear, if you don't want to have to repost and re-notify
Oh, yeah.
abutters, everything, you've got to continue to a date and time certain, date, time
Yes.
and place certain. So let's do that on a motion.
Yeah,
So,
let me look at my calendar.
all right, so today's the 26th. 2 weeks is the 10th of October.
Yeah, so, yeah, we have a meeting scheduled for that day, so, guess we're asking the applicant if they're all right with continuing the hearing until October 10th at 7:15?
Yes.
Okay, great.
By
I
Zoom.
need a motion from commission.
So motioned?
Second,
I'll second.
okay, Douglas,
Aye.
Rowan,
Aye.
Khan,
Aye.
and Wilson, aye.
Beth, do you want me there?
All right. Yes, that would be great. That would be helpful. All right, thanks, everyone. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Beth and commissioners.
Thank
Much
you, everybody.
appreciated.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Have a good night.
Done with me for the evening?
Yes, thank you, Donna. Thank you
Thanks,
so
Donna.
much.
Nice seeing you all. Have a good couple weeks.
You too. All right. So next on our agenda is site visit scheduling. We kind of did that earlier, right? Jan, well, you've got one to schedule.
Can you just run through those dates, please?
You're muted, Jan.
Okay, yes, I will run through those dates. On October 5th, we have 2 site visits, one to 43 Old Orchard Road at 9:30, one to Top of the Lake at 10:30. And I'm not sure whether we were gonna do Southbrook. Scott, you're here now. Were we gonna try to do something with Southbrook?
What would we be doing with South Park?
I thought you had something about parking or something there.
Oh, that was, you mean the beginning of the meeting?
No,
Well,
I don't know when this was. You brought it up that maybe South, I don't know.
Okay. Well, there is work to do at Southbrook in terms of we have work to do on the trail rerouting, and there's some money left there to spend, but there's no site visit planned for Southbrook that I'm aware of.
Okay. And the next one was October 6th at 2:45, from 2:45 to 5. We're gonna have a table at the town birthday party on the town common.
I hope there's gonna be cake.
A big cake.
There's cupcakes.
I hope so.
Every
Good.
day is your birthday on the countdown.
Wow, Scott.
It's
Nice.
a tagline. Feel free to use that.
Do you guys think either one of you are gonna be able to make that? Bob and Scott?
Yeah, I'll have to check my calendar. I don't know. I think that's a soccer tournament, so I may be away that Sunday, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't looked, but when would we be there? When would you need help? Are we all trying to be there at the same time? Or are we trying to rotate through, or?
It's just 2 hours, 2:45.
Oh, it's only
to
2
5.
hours.
Yeah.
When is it? I know it's the 6th, but what time?
2:45 to 5.
Yeah.
It's on the town common.
2:45 to 5. Very specific.
Yeah.
It's funny, yeah, right?
Yeah,
But that's good though, as you know, we're a small town, won't be a lot of people, short little
Yeah,
time
no,
frame, you'll get, it'll be good.
I I just need to clear it with headquarters, but right, pencil me in. That would be fun if I can do it.
Awesome.
And I hear there's cake.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay, and then Jan, like I said, I sent you an email about one other site visit. It's another one of those building permits that I just get notified about, and we have to just go see if there's any wetlands there.
Okay.
I think it was
will.
Sumner
I'll send
Mountain.
something out.
Great, great.
Did you give me did you give me a contact for this guy?
Yes, I
Good,
did.
that's easier.
Yeah. I'm wondering if I sent you like an email or a phone number, because it was just the contractor's name.
Okay.
So I don't know, look at the email. If you can't get any more info, I can try to find out more.
Grace got me today, so it's okay.
Good. Okay. Anybody have any other comments, Bob?
Yeah, sorry, and I don't know if this is the place, but there were a few things that I wanted to bring up. The two different educational opportunities that I sent you via email. Alicia, who's a DP rep on Monday, will be giving a talk on when to choose an RDA versus an NOI. So that's a Zoom link that I sent you guys. And also the MACC in Devens is having a conference coming up in a couple weeks too. That's a great way to get education on the Floods Protection Act and town laws. And I scared Beth away. Oh, she's
Oh,
back.
sorry.
Um,
We're watching a dog and it
let the
just
cat
wandered
in.
in here and I'm not sure what it was trying to do, so I had to get rid of it.
Yeah, so the two opportunities from DEP, one at Devens and one online. I did want to ask about the regulations and a new commissioner. Um, so we or I should say you put forward regulations. They got voted on at town meeting with a overwhelming vote. In order to make those active, we need to accept them, correct? And I know they're tedious as blazes, but I really think it's in our best interest to get those done. And I was going to suggest that my understanding is there's money left in the advisory fund for this, and perhaps we hire somebody to help us march through the rest of these and have them active. And I just throwing it out there for conversation.
I do think we need to keep working on them, and I think we took a little break there because we got sort of really busy for a couple meetings, and this meeting we didn't have a lot on the agenda, so we probably could have had it, but this ended up going really late
It
too.
did, yeah, and
I don't mind putting it on our next agenda. I can, look back and see where we were at. And I can email you guys with which sections we should be looking at and talking about at our next meeting. I just, hiring somebody to come in and do it. I just feel like they're too far along for that,
Okay.
we have this set of regulations that was 100% approved. Then we updated the bylaw and we had to sort of update the regulations according to the changes in the bylaw. And I don't know, I just feel like they're so close that we might as well just kind of slog through and just do it.
Yeah, they are tedious, but I really think my concern is that we might end up in a legal case and we wouldn't have the bylaw in effect. So I think it is worth. I think all the heavy lifting has been done, and really just bringing them into the barn I think is important.
Bob, we
Yeah.
have the bylaw. You mean the regulations?
The regulations. I apologize.
Yeah.
Yes, the
I
regulations.
would like to do what we were doing. I understand that we took I mean, it's just, there's only so much time in a meeting.
Absolutely, and they
And
are
as the
tedious
fall
to go
winds
through.
in, there's gonna be more time, so we can take this up during the winter. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think things will be quieter soon.
Um,
Yeah,
Thank-
and I guess I'm still sort of confused that, I mean, we have a bylaw that got approved, and we do have a set of regulations that then they got, and they're the new ones, that were approved. Then after having those approved, we went and changed the bylaw. So there are some inconsistencies between the two, like the regulations do need to be updated to be in conformance with the new bylaw. But I still feel like the regulations that we have, which are tentatively kind of definitely newer than what we used to have, are active right now. They just
Okay.
don't completely meet our bylaw, is the way I understand it. We can use them. We just really are under the gun to update them in accordance with our bylaw. That's
Yeah,
how I understand it.
I would be worried that a slick attorney would be able to find that place where things don't match up and would take advantage of it. Anyway, I think we're in agreement that we want to kind of slog through it, so I'm certainly content with that. The other thing is I know there was a commissioner that was looked at and was coming into the commission, and I understand that person may be moving and is off of the commission shortlist. I was wondering if
Yeah.
I know that other positions in town have been advertised on the website and kind of a net cast for members. Is that something that the commission could do or the town could do?
Yeah, definitely. I can ask Becky what they're doing with that. I think they usually send it out with the town flyer that goes out. They'll advertise for committees that need members and then just start listing, and it's always a big long list of committees that are looking for people. So yeah, we're looking again. Right now I was kind of focusing on filling that land use clerk position, which was very important. And now I think we're set with that, so we can start looking again. I see Tom is still listening. Tom, are you still interested in being on the Conservation Commission?
Hmm.
First word, sounds like.
Yes, thanks, sorry to be muted for that, but I appreciate that. Yeah, I would definitely be interested. Thank you.
You would, okay. Good to know. Thank you for always being interested. Still being
Here if
interested.
you need.
And we did talk about the birthday party. We did talk about the birthday party event being a kind of a recruiting event. If anybody's interested, we can bring some material to help further their interest, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a good opportunity to have some maybe a little description of what a commissioner's role is. And then maybe be sure to be kind of mentioning that we only have 4. It's a good idea.
Excellent, and thank you. I apologize that I tacked another 10 minutes onto the meeting there. So, thank you for listening to those.
Yeah, no problem. It's all good. All right. Motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn at
Second.
9:20 p.m.
Okay, Con,
Aye.
Douglas,
Aye.
Rowan, and Wilson. Aye. Oh, and sorry, Jen, are you doing the
Said
minutes?
I was muted.
I thought you did, yeah. You're doing the minutes for tonight
I am.
again? Oh, thank you. Hopefully this might be your last time having to do that. That would be great. All right, good night, everyone.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, Jan, for doing the minutes.
Yeah, thanks, Jan. All right,
Bye.
bye, bye.